egos are a thing, man. I've seen so many wrestlers where they get so engulfed in their character that they forget that it's a show.
Yeah. Welcome to Mosaic Minds, the podcast where every episode is a colorful blend of perspectives, ideas, and conversation. Each week, our diverse team of hosts brings their unique backgrounds, experiences, and interests to the table. Mosaic Minds is your invitation to join the conversation to see the world through a kaleidoscope of viewpoints. So grab a seat, tune in, and let the mosaic unfold before you. Welcome to another episode of Mosaic Minds Podcast. My name's Nick. This is Jason. And today our guest is Reggie Edwards. He is a journalist and a media personality. He's the co-founder of Front Row Report, where he's covered major bands and concerts since 2011, and he also runs Indie Sports Daily. He focuses on Indie Sports Daily, I should say, focuses on pro sports, wrestling events like WWE and AEW, and he's a part of the creative team and on-camera personality for WCWO Wrestling. He previously worked with WPW Wrestling, and beyond his media work, he manages to balance his role as an apartment manager with a busy family life. So let's go ahead and dive into his journey. And just, if you could, Reggie, first of all, welcome to the show.
Welcome.
And if you could just kind of give us a little bit, I know I kind of gave a synopsis, but go ahead and give us a little bit of a background about yourself and how you got to where you're at now.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate you having me on. Yeah, you touched on it a lot there. I wear a lot of different hats with WCWO Wrestling, creative team, on-camera personality. I also do a lot of commentary, backstage interviews. I'm when you watch the show on Friday nights here in Indianapolis, I am one of the people that has a big hand in breathing that show to life, putting the matches together, the storylines you see. Cool. So that's what I do there. Then with the Front Row Report, since 2011, have been interviewing major bands, photographing concerts, reviewing music, all that stuff. Then with Indie Sports Daily, as a photographer and writer, basically I'm putting credential requests for our staff, photograph basketball, football, baseball, hockey, pro wrestling. I do a lot of pro wrestling interviews for them as well. That's the gist of those three creative outlets for what I do with them.
Who would you say, I have to ask, who would you say is in your opinion, is the most famous wrestler that you've, I don't know, come in contact with or worked closely by?
So as far as interviewing?
Or anything.
Chris Jericho and...
Okay.
Yeah, interviewing Chris Jericho and Mick Foley would be probably the two biggest I've interviewed.
Nice.
Yeah. And then... But if you want to count the press conferences with WWE, you can throw John Cena, Triple H, Cody Rhodes, throw them in there as well, because I covered a couple pay-per-view PLEs for WWE where you get to go to the press conferences afterwards. As biggest name people I've come in contact with, and as far as just come in contact with, Tony Khan, Triple H, John Cena, let's see, Ultimo Guerrero would be one. God, there's so many. It's hard to keep them all straight. But yeah, those would be the biggest ones in wrestling that I've encountered, come across, interviewed, or been in the presence of.
Man, Nick, I hate to be so blunt, but this guy has a lifestyle I'm envious of, man.
I know, right?
I'm fascinated with the wrestling
Punk
culture. So back in the day when I used to party a little bit, I'd spend about 15 minutes after everybody get liquored up a little bit and do the Undertaker walk, the JFF, JRRETT, that's Jeff Jarrett, just
great.
Kind of having a good little fun with it. So
who are the guys that did the
Bushwhackers?
Bushwhackers. Yeah, licking their opponents' foreheads, yeah.
When you're talking to wrestlers, okay, let's give a little insight, because in Indianapolis, we're a sports mecca. Wrestling's a big part of that. Even the basketball players, the football players go to those events now. Talk to me a little bit about the general conversations, or how is the wrestling crowd? We know about a lot of other sports, mainstream wrestling a little bit for us. How does that look from behind the mic perspective?
Interesting. Wrestling fans are some of the a lot of people discount how smart wrestling fans really are and how smart they really can be. They're super in tune with what's going on backstage and behind the scenes. Sometimes they think they are more so than they really are, but I think a lot of wrestlers kind of take for granted how smart the average wrestling fan can be. Like a diehard wrestling fan can tell you what's going on backstage at WWE right now and who is behind what storylines and why certain things happened, and nobody's really sure how they figure it out, but they do. And there's a huge difference between a WWE fan and an AEW fan. The AEW fan, like when AEW first started, I like to compare it to WWE as the party and AEW as the after party. The AEW crowd is so much more rowdy and adult oriented, similar to like what the WWF fans were in like 1997, 98, 99, 2000. Very, very college centric, like our age group, and then the WWE fan is more family oriented.
Yeah.
It's not so much anymore, but it's a lot more of a family crowd, a little bit more toned down. But the diehard fans, man, they're insane. They are crazy.
That's cool. I was telling Jason, I just watched that Vince McMahon documentary on Netflix, and it's pretty crazy. But like, I learned a lot of things about wrestling that I didn't know. I mean, like, I wasn't aware that there was this like territorial, kind of war going on between all these different regions. Like it used to be to where it was just understood that this is your area, and this is your area. I had no idea. In fact, I always kind of wondered. I used to watch wrestling with my brother a little bit, like when we were kids, and we'd throw each other over the couch while we were watching it and that kind of thing. But I never, like, I just thought wrestling was wrestling. Like, I didn't even know until I was a little bit older that there was, I just thought it was WWF, like it all was. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting looking at like wrestling now and wrestling in maybe the 50s, 60s, 70s, and even mid 80s or so. Yeah, like they talked about that documentary, like everybody had their own territory. It was really like turf wars almost, where like you did not cross into, like if New York was the WWF's territory, they did not go to Atlanta or Florida or, Texas. And if they did, there's stories of, I think Vince talked about it on the documentary, like his father had death threats, and other wrestling promoters were threatening to kill him if he came into their territory. Like, you didn't do that. And so when it started happening, it was, nobody ever thought that would ever happen. So it was a crazy time. I wish I would have been alive for it.
How old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
37.
Okay.
We're mid-40s, just to kind of throw that out there. So the claim to fame that I have is it's an old school match, but you may have known about it. I've already said this on another podcast episode, but it was the Macho Man against Ricky the Dragon Steamboat.
WrestleMania 3.
Yep. Macho. Well, this was those two fighting in Fort Wayne, but yes, they did do that. But this was just kind of a one-off, and he hit him with the championship belt, and then his larynx was crushed. So he would interview for like 2 months with I can't even try to do it, but I'm saying his voice was obviously messed up. And then what was so weird about it is after that stick was over, he went back to a normal speech, and everything was all good.
It's insane how that happens,
and the rivalry was still there. So
it's crazy how miraculously they heal. It's unbelievable. It's like some black magic voodoo stuff. I don't know how they pulled that off.
I think the cool thing about wrestling, though, is let's be real about it. Lesnar's a good example, in my opinion. I mean, the man goes out and he doesn't even really play football, and he goes to the Vikings. He almost darn near made the team. I mean, I got to be brutally honest with you. I'm giving him a lot of credit. He understands the plays. He's a world-class athlete. But, man, the ability of some of these guys, because it used to be powerlifting. Now it's a lot of high flying. It's a lot of breaking tables. A lot of the stuff, man, could put you in harm's way. And I think that the athletes are better today, but it's almost like the power hasn't left either. So, I mean, I got a lot of respect. I got to tip my cap to a lot of these guys that are on TV today.
Yeah, and one thing I love about WCWO is we're not just a wrestling company or wrestling promotion. We're also a training school. We're a wrestling school first. And so every Tuesday night and every Sunday afternoon, we have wrestling training, wrestling practice. It's just like football and basketball and baseball. We actually have practice. And there's always new training classes starting up. And I always, as a kid, wanted to be a pro wrestler. Like, always wanted to be. I took one step inside the building just to watch a wrestling practice. I no longer want to be a pro wrestler. My God, that mat is, underneath that canvas and that mat is just plywood and steel beams and like a little pad about that thick, and that's it. And like, there's no way. No, I'm good. I've had some like matches, but no.
Well, not only that, you're practicing and you're getting body slammed or suplexed X amount of times. And I got to be brutally honest, you're relying on that person to have the steps. Because I'm fascinated with the tactician. Like, I don't want to throw too old school, but like, I think tactician wise, Bret the Hitman Hart is to a lot of people as far as wrestling. I'm not going to name a name that's negative, but I've heard that some guys were a little rough. They weren't real finessey. They kind of, they busted people up a little bit. So I think there's something to be said to not only sell it, but to be an athlete, but to also be able to translate that out to the crowd. Speak a little bit on the promotional side, the storylines, man. That's some good stuff right there. Talk to me a little bit about that, please.
As far as like how they come together and like what goes into it?
Yeah, just give me a random, like, how do you come up with a storyline? What do you think, and what's your creative approach to it? You could take that in any direction.
Yeah. So there's a team. There's a few of us that work that side of it. So there's probably 3 or 4 of us that do that cohesively. And, there's a lot of different things that go into deciding what storylines happen with who. One would be, okay, we've got our heavyweight champion, our top guy. He's a heel. Who are the fans starting to get behind? Who are the fans really like? Who do we need to get over with the fans more? Or who do we have, you could be looking at what 2 guys gel really well together in the ring, but really also have a personality, because a good storyline is more than just matches for having matches. A good storyline, like you've seen so many times, is promos. Beginning, an arc, a come down. So back in 2020, for example, we had a brand new wrestler. His name was Blake Money Wright, and he was in a program with a heel wrestler, and Blake was really trying to find his footing and find his personality, and he did one promo where he just went all in on pinpointing things about the heel wrestler that he could kind of poke fun at in a really, really lighthearted, fun way, but he knew the fans with the crowd would really get behind it. It was like this light switch flipped for him, and he started doing that, and over the next few months, that was, I want to say, October, November 2020. By the end of December, he was one of our top good guys, one of our top baby faces, term you've probably heard a million times. And at the time, we were building a monster heel in Jordan James, and it was just natural. He's a really throwback heel, very, very 80s style heel. The way he wrestles, the way he talks, stuff like that. Like, he's just so hateable. He's a great heel, and he had betrayed somebody at our Christmas show, and the fans just turned on him. Like when he screwed the top guy on the Black Friday show, the fans were throwing stuff at him. It was great. So when we put the heavyweight title on him, we knew we had our heel made. He had so much heat, so we were looking for that baby face to really come up to his level and really get the crowd behind somebody that would want to see that good guy babyface take down the heel Jordan James, and Blake was the guy. And it was your typical, he's your white meat babyface, crowd loves him, we're just going to have him go into a storyline with Jordan James and maybe have him take the championship. We're not sure, we'll see how it goes. But then it was, we run every Friday night. So you have to come up with something to start the first Friday with, then come up with something every single Friday night to keep the fans invested in it, to where they want to see that championship match take place and see Blake beat Jordan James for the belt. So the first thing we did was Jordan James threw a New Year's celebration to celebrate his championship win. He had his faction out there with him. And Blake crashed the party. It was so easy. He crashed the party. We bought some sparkling grape juice or something, but we took a picture of Jordan James and put it over the label so it looked like Jordan James wine or champagne for New Year's. And Blake came out and just called it bath water and Mars Hill bath water wine. It's so easy, but for a good storyline, you want the babyface to find these digs on the heel that the crowd can get behind, and then the whole point of the storyline is to make the crowd feel something and get invested in both wrestlers, so that it's just, I want to see that heel beat the crap out of the babyface. And then the other part you got to figure out is, when you pull the trigger on the payoff, do you have it be 1 month long? Do you have it be 2-3 months long? And a lot of times that changes. We've had times where it's like, we don't know if it's going to be good, so we'll see how it goes. And maybe after a month we move on, and then the crowd just catches fire, and we stretch it for a month or two, And we had a heel who was a champion for Christmas 2021 till July, August of 2022.
Nice.
And so many times we thought about switching the belt, but he just had so much heat. The crowd just showed up wanting to see him get his ass kicked every week, and we're like,
yes, sir.
We have to keep going with this.
Yep.
And there's so many different ways to do a good storyline and a good program. We've done so many different ones. We've even had some where I had to be involved in them because I'm a heel commentator there. I'm a heel announcer. I'm like the Jonathan Coachman, or I don't want to compare myself to him, but that type of a heel on camera personality where the crowd just hates me for some reason, and I say I'm like the Nickelback of WCWO. They don't realize, they don't remember why they hate me. They just hate me.
They just know they do. Yeah.
Just look at the photograph, right?
You've got to look at who's over, who has the most heat as a heel, or who has heat as a heel, who the crowd is behind as a babyface, and who works really well together, who doesn't work well together, who has potential to get over as a heel or a babyface, and how can you tell a captivating story with those two guys? And sometimes the storyline is just with one person. It just really depends on your situation, but
yeah,
it's really about making the crowd feel something.
It never really occurred to me the story writer part of it, So I mean, obviously that's there, but like it never really occurred to me.
Yeah.
So I picture it as kind of like a show writer, like show writers, like that you guys sit around like a table or whatever and bounce ideas off each other and come up to agreement, something like that. I mean, is that kind of how it is?
Yeah. We sit down once every week, and it'll be okay. So we're at the start of the month. For like in the middle of the month where you're just doing a regular show. Okay, so we've got these 4 top guys. Okay, who's wrestling Jordan James this week? Who's wrestling Maleko this week? Who's going to wrestle Dex Royal this week? Hey, out of nowhere, we've got Congo Kong coming in. Or one week, I was on my way to the show. I was driving there, and our promoter called me. He's like, what match do we have that we can fuck with? I'm like, we have 2 of them. One's a triple threat. And this was our the end of the month show every month is our like premium live event. So like this one was called Scorched Earth, I think. And we had a match that was we called it a good old fashioned duel. It was between 2 guys. We just needed to push some tickets. We're like, these 2 are going to have a good old fashioned duel. No one knows what it is, but anything goes. And I was like, well, we got the duel with Jason Levi and Cecil Cerveza, so why? Why do we need to fuck with it? He's like, well, Madman Pondo's in town and wants to wrestle, so we need to get him in a match. I'm like, fuck it.
Let's go.
Put him in that one. He's like, okay, we'll do that, but we can't tell the guys until he gets there. I'm like, cool. So most weeks we got these 4 baby faces, we got these 4 heels. Who's going to work well with them in a match this week? That's what it is most weeks, is putting matches together, and then, okay, we have this storyline going right now. What do we need to do with that? And ideally you have the top, like the main outline for the story written before you go in. You may need to tweak some matches here and there, but there's so many different things that go into putting the show together, and then obviously like things come up. COVID time was almost impossible to plan for every week. Because, so-and-so's got COVID this week. Well, they were taking the title this week, so we can't do that now, stuff like that comes up. It's
COVID
really,
man. We have COVID man in this corner.
right.
I'm a weird.
It got crazy.
I'm a weird analogy, dude, but I would tell you this, man. You're giving me a side of wrestling that I've never really seen, because to me, you're kind of a ventriloquist, right? I know that sounds weird, but you're not manipulating, but the crowd. You're working the robot.
You are.
And then I think
absolutely
what I'm going to say is, in some poor productions, you can actually see the person behind the curtain, if that makes sense. It's too predictable. Yeah. So I'm fascinated with the heel. I mean, everybody likes the champion, you know. Like, you'd appreciate this. I work at a school, and we would do, like, walkout music or whatever, and I always did the Undertaker. The just slow walk. You know, you got to have that old school hat that goes over to you can't see your reflection. You got to have that that death in your eyes. But anyway, it's just like that cranked iconic music to me. And Ultimate Warrior was one of my all time favorites. I know I'm going a little old school on you, but just coming up there when he beat up Honky Tonk Man and he didn't even get his outfit on. He pinned him in like 6 or 8 seconds, and it was just a hurricane of instant energy. The thing that I think is cool is kind of the talk to me a little bit about a success story that you've had of a guy that's either the crowd favorite or the heel that's maybe switched roles, and how does that look for you? You can use a name if you want, just to throw a little promotion out your way, but go ahead.
We've had a few. Jordan James is a heel, like I said, such a great heel. And in 2022, we were trying a lot of different things with a lot of different guys to try to just freshen it up. Because, well, that's one story. I'll go on with that one. I've been pushing for months just to see Jordan James work as a babyface. Like, I want to see him a babyface. And everyone's like, you will never see that man as a babyface in this company. It cannot be done. I'm like, it can be done. And we kind of moved away from it for a while because we couldn't figure out how to pull it off. And we eventually came up with the idea of he gets tired of his manager helping him win dirty. He's the longest tenured wrestler at WCWO. He's the top heel, and he wants to try a different way. And so we had him turn on his heel manager and fire him, and I got him over as a babyface. And within 8-9 months, probably, he was the top babyface in the company. And it was the weirdest thing ever. It was so just weird. But it worked. He ended up getting over, and that was one of those things where we had to have the right heels, to really be really dastardly bad guys to make the crowd want to see him. And that's where you go back to the ventriloquist thing, where you're kind of manipulating the fans. It's like, we need to get this guy over as a babyface. Who do we have that the fans hate so much that putting him against there will make the crowd realize this is a good guy now?
I have to wonder how many wrestlers, especially like in the late 80s, early 90s, like around in there, how many wrestlers get so wrapped up in the story that they start to believe that it's
like
true.
They morph into
you know what I mean?
Like
did they ever get so engulfed, do you think, that they're all of a sudden this is who they are? Like, this story is real. Like a method actor. Egos
are a thing, man. I've seen so many wrestlers where they get so engulfed in their character that they forget that it's a show.
Yeah.
We've had times where we have to really make sure that what we book is what's really legitimately going to happen out there. Yeah. And there was one instance where me and one of the other guys was walking around all night watching one wrestler to make sure that he wasn't politicking his way into a nut. Things happen, but we've had it happen a few times, but on our level, though, it's pretty easy to put a stop to that. There's the obvious, there's the notorious Bret Hitman Hart Montreal Screwjob thing where he didn't want to drop the title to Shawn Michaels in Canada because Shawn said that he wouldn't do the same favor for Bret's, and so Bret's like, I'm not going to drop it, but he was going to WCW literally the next day, so he had to drop it, but just didn't want to. Then the famous Hulk Hogan, that doesn't work for me, brother thing,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there's it happens, but I haven't seen it happen a lot. program we had where we weren't sure if it was going to work, but it worked really well, was at one point a few years ago, we had a roster of like 35 guys at one point, and it was so hard to fit 35 guys into 8 matches every week and keep it fresh. And it got to where we have like 4 tag team matches, and just, it was tough. And our promoter, Joey, had the idea of doing a brand split like they did in WWE. And at the time, I was causing a pretty big ruckus on the show as a heel. Like, I was manipulating the good guys and bad guys into I basically turned the locker room against itself, is what happened every week. And they're like, we're going to split the roster down the middle. We're going to have a draft, and we're going to split the show. And Reggie runs one show, Pete runs the other. And we thought it was a storyline. Apparently it was very real, and we weren't sure how it was going to work. We're like, it's tough to do that on our level. And it ended up lasting about 8 months, and it went extremely well. They were 2 different shows. My show was very different than the other one, and we're still really proud of how long we were able to make that last and how well it worked.
I think
really good stories. And
go ahead.
No, great, good storylines, good matches. It was a good change.
I think one of the most unheralded ones that not a lot of people know about is when the Canadian earthquake came on the scene for the first time. I believe his name was like John Tetna, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway,
Yes.
He was just kind of a normal crowd guy, if you will. And with all due respect, didn't really look like a wrestler t-shirt. And all of a sudden, this guy's 450 plus, and he's a high flyer. He's not a power lifter. I mean, the guy's got a vertical jump. He's athletic. And then, of course, when you hear the jump, what was it? When you hear the earth rumble, when you hear the earth shake, you better watch out because the Canadian quake's coming. He's just given that. And I never will forget Piper's Pit. I remember Jake had a great segment and a great run there. I was always fascinated with the managers too. Got to shout out to Bobby the Brain Heenan, Slickster.
Yes.
Hey, help me out a little bit here. Let me transition here. So I'm new.
Sure.
I'm new to the scene. I'm visiting here in Indianapolis area. I go to a WCWO event. Kind of walk me through the venue, kind of maybe ages, crowd. Just kind of walk me through what a night is going to look like from my seat at one of those events, just to kind of help the local crowd out.
It's an interesting place. You walk in, and it's not the nicest venue. It's an old place, and you walk in, and you're just like, okay, what's this all about? You walk in, you got the concession stand right when you first walk in the door, and it's hard to describe how it looks. But you walk in, and you got the row of chairs right inside the door for a while, and then you got around the corner row of seats on 3 sides of the ring. You got the entrance ramp, and the lights go down, and we have a really good mix of old school wrestling from maybe the 80s, and then mixed with your technical wrestlers, and then mixed with your high flyers, and then some tag teams. And we pride ourselves on being a family friendly show. It's a family show. It's not like you would see in the Attitude Era at all. It's probably more like early, like, remember that weird time where it wasn't the 80s, but it wasn't the Attitude Era yet? You had like Razor Ramon, Diesel, Doink the Clown, Bret Hart. It's like that era of the WWF where times were changing. There's still some old school, but it was transitioning to new. And that's really what our show is a lot like. You got a lot of throwback, but you got a lot of modernization on the show. And then as far as fans, we have a lot of kids in the crowd, a lot of families. But then we also have a lot of 30 to 40 to 50-year-old men in the crowd as well. We have our regulars who we know by name.
Nice.
And then we have a lot of fans where they found us at in 23 and 24. We ran at Indiana Comic-Con all weekend long, both years, and then PopCon this year as well. So we have a lot of fans that found us at Indiana Comic-Con and PopCon and just latched onto us there. And they just come religiously every Friday. We've got fans that, one fan a few weeks ago made action figures of our guys and brought them for them. He also does like drawings and paintings of some of our guys, and he's just a dedicated fan that just brings stuff for the guys.
Super cool.
Now that I mentioned, now I'm thinking about it, he has yet to do that for me. So if Ben is watching or listening to this, what the hell? But no, it's like our regular fans are almost like family to a degree. We know them by name. We see them all the time. One fan pops up at concerts I shoot, not on purpose, but like I'll be shooting a rock show and he's there and he's yelling at me. And so there's a lot of bleed over. It's a very dedicated fan base, and it's an interesting time. It's an interesting night, but I always say if you don't like the match you're watching, just hang around because there'll be something that you do like on the show.
Hey, so let's step out of the ring a little bit. Let's talk about some other sports. Let's talk about some other venues. I don't know how much of a sports fan you are, but it sounds like you are. Randy Johnson, does that name ring a bell?
Yeah.
Pitcher?
Yeah,
Randy
absolutely.
Johnson's one of the better photographers because he's 6'10" and
Weird.
he stands up as a baseball pitcher with a mullet, right, Nick? And
He's the one that killed the bird with the baseball.
Yeah, he killed the bird with a baseball. You'll have to watch the video if you haven't seen it. But anyway, he's higher than everybody, so he gets good photography.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about maybe the difference maybe of, let's say, a WCWO event versus a XYZ event on the lawn downtown Indy or wherever venue you're at across the city.
It is so weird. I'll have weeks where I'm photographing a Christian praise and worship show on Thursday. I'm on a WCWO Wrestling show Friday. And then I'm on the field at Ross-Ade Stadium or on the court at Mackey Arena or Assembly Hall on Saturday. And my weeks are so weird. But they're very different. They're all very different experiences from my point of view because what you're seeing on TV with a football game or a baseball game or a basketball game, with basketball, like with the Fever, I'm on the court photographing underneath the basket. With Purdue football and IU football, I'm on the field, on the sideline, like where Randy Johnson would be, photographing. Hockey is intense because you're literally standing on the floor behind the glass as they're body checking into it. And that's more similar to wrestling. But, and then obviously with concerts, photographing concerts and photographing sports are also two completely very different experiences, setups, and just things. It's just so many differences between them.
Did photography, did that start out as a hobby, or is that kind of like your back? Yeah?
Yeah, and that's how I got into WCWO. I was
Okay.
only supposed to be a ringside photographer for one show in August of 2020, and that was it. And now here I am. I'm still not sure how they pulled that off. I swear they worked
That's
the
cool.
whole time. But yeah, it started in college, man. I didn't know what I wanted to do for a career. I had no idea. I thought I wanted to be a social worker, and then my girlfriend at the time pointed out that I don't do mornings very well. And that's a very important part of that. So she brought up going to work for the school newspaper at Indiana State. And one of my first assignments was photographing a concert Willie Nelson's son Lucas was playing in town in Terre Haute. And I took a camera and photographed the show and ended up hanging out with him on the tour bus afterwards and interviewed him. And yeah, that was an experience.
I bet. Is he like his dad?
Yeah. I slept through my deadline the next day. Let's just say that.
There you go.
And I'm like, this is fun. And then they put me on a Jason Aldean concert that was in town. And I'm like, this is fun. And then after college, I really didn't think much of it until I went back to college the next year. And a couple things happened to the student newspaper where I wasn't there for a period of time, but I wanted to keep going to concerts. And I was like, I'll start a music website. And it was surprisingly easy to get concert credentials when you have a music website. And it started with Brian Welch from Korn was doing a solo show in Franklin, Indiana. I got credentialed for that. And then a big Winter Jam, which is like a big Christian arena tour, was in Evansville. I got credentialed for that.
Yeah, I think my cousins actually went to that concert. Was that like
It's an experience.
was that like 2004 15 maybe, or 16, something
They
like
do it every year. I think
Okay.
this is the 25th year they've done it, but I've covered, I want to say, 8 of those. And one thing I love about my site is, for one, I run it, so I'm the boss, so I don't do deadlines. But another music website interviewed me once, and the headline of it was Front Row Report, the only place where you're going to find Slayer, Backstreet Boys, Marilyn Manson, and Amy Grant all in one day.
Yeah.
Shameless plug, man. That's the Mosaic Minds. I mean, honestly,
Yes.
like
Yeah.
we've said this 4 or 5 times, and that's a perfect segue, right? I'm going to be a broadcasting official guy here for a second, but you're absolutely right, because you have the ability to do that both in your storyline and in your concerts, because we love talking to you. But then last week or this week, we talked to a real estate investor, then we talked to a sports guy. It's just so fun to see. You smile and you laugh, and you're coming up with the storylines, and you're doing this. A guy named Mark Garza by chance that runs the camera at some events. He's an IU alum. He runs the basketball, NBA basketball and stuff.
Probably seen him.
Yeah,
There's a lot of it, man. There's so many photographers at those things.
Absolutely.
I know them, and I don't know any of their names.
There you go.
So,
I'm sure you've been at common events, because he's if it's a
Yeah.
big event in town, he's running the camera somewhere. I always get jealous, because Assembly Hall is kind of my place, man. It's just a mecca in my opinion. It's not a Purdue and IU thing. It's just I'm closer to IU. I appreciate both teams, but it's he's always in there, and it's like, man, I'd love to be there rocking the Big Ten game on a Saturday night and kind of live vicariously through the Hoopers. So that's good stuff.
I'm from Iowa originally, so it's really tough supporting IU and Purdue on a yearly basis, but I have to. So
Is that what? So you came here for? Did you come here for college?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I came here for college in 2009, and once I started the Front Row Report up, when I went back home to Iowa, my house is three hours from any big city, and it's just. I got so bored. I was working with a 4 to midnight shift at a factory and trying to do Front Row Report in between things. I was able to pull it off, but it got old getting home from a concert at 5 a.m. from Des Moines or Cedar Rapids or Waterloo. And, I was just like, if I'm going to do this, I need to go somewhere where things are closer. And instead of 3 hours, it's 20 minutes from my office at work to get to a show or a game. And I was like, I'm going back to Indiana. That's really why I came back in 2011, because the Front Row was starting to really take off. I did a couple shows when I was still in Iowa, and I'm like, this is something I could really do if I want to really put a lot of work into this. So I was like, I'll reload. It was either Portland, Oregon, or Indianapolis, Indiana, and Indy has more shows. And so that's why I came here, and almost within 5 months, I'm at Rock on the Range with Rob Zombie and Shinedown and Five Finger Death Punch, Marilyn Manson. I'm like, good call. It worked.
Yeah. Do you have any artists, bands, anything like that you've built such a rapport with that you could literally get them on on your cell phone? Like, hey, what's up?
So emailing is always best, but there's a few. What's more common for me is because I do a ton of same thing you guys do, but for bands, I interviews on a regular basis, and it's really cool when a band that I grew up listening to, or a band that I love, or a band whose music saved my life. I was interviewing John from Skillet once, and I've interviewed him so many times now that in 2022 when I interviewed him, he got on the phone and was like, "Oh, Reggie." I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, it's do so many of these. It's really nice when I look at my schedule and see a name that I know and that I know is going to do a good interview. That's just a friend. I'm like,
yeah,
cool. So it's more bands that I love knowing who I am, or I've interviewed them so many times I can walk up to them at a festival and just talk. I've stayed at shows with singers from bands until 3, 4 in the morning just talking about life because I've covered them so many times now. Stuff like that's a little bit more common. There's a few that I could shoot an email to, like, "Hey, bud, I saw you're coming to town. Let's chill and do an interview." They're like, "Yeah, let's do it." That happens.
Yeah, it's funny how, there's very few people that we've had on the show because most of the people that come on, we've never met before, so there's very few people we've had on the show that afterwards I couldn't say that, man, we could totally hang out with them. We talk about it all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, and of course, a lot of it, like we would, but everybody's so busy that it's hard to ever get together. But we talk about it all the time, like, hey, we really need to get together. We need to go hang out, and make a trip down to Louisville or to Arizona or whatever.
Yeah, we got an invite to sit on top of the Green Monster in Fenway Park by a guy that we barely know, and it's like, dude, like, can I be there tomorrow night? I'm like, I mean, honestly, we'll talk offline, but I'm not afraid to let the crowd know, man. I got a broadcasting degree 25 years ago, never got to develop it. Family, life, work. You do a lot of things that honestly, man, we would lend ourselves to X project and really not want anything in return other than, getting in front of some people. And we have some similar talents. I mean, when it comes down to it, you're easy to talk to. You're excited about your projects. And you seem like you stay busy and you stay diversified. I think that's what we try to do because it'd be so boring to talk X. And I'm not going to insult any guests that we've ever had or any future guests, but I don't want to talk X all the time. I want to talk a little wrestling. I want to talk various, because I think Indianapolis is a great sport, great concert venues, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Great sports.
It's amazing here.
You'd be hard pressed to find a better mix of that because there's better sports cities, maybe there's better music cities, but it's hard to kind of get everything in that same mixed pot, if you will.
I love Indianapolis because coming from a town of like 3,000 people in Iowa, the middle of nowhere, Indianapolis still feels like a small town in a lot of ways. Everybody here, unless they're driving, is really nice.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
If they're driving,
It's very true.
it's not. It's like New York City. No, it's a big city with a small town feel. That's why Caitlin Clark feels so at home here. And we're close to everything. We're close to Chicago, St. Louis, Cincinnati, Detroit, Nashville, Detroit. Like, if we don't have it here, we're within a 4 or 5 hour drive of whatever we're not getting. And so that's why we get so much stuff, because we're in the middle of everything, It's crazy. I couldn't have picked a better city to move to. Like,
Rewind the clock about 30 years ago, but I was in Dyersville for the Field of Dreams, actually, right? And what was crazy about my experience at the Field of Dreams is, with all due respect, right now it's blown up and it's commercialized, right? Dad and I went there, and we thought it was so cool to get a couple corn ears off the field that they walked through, right? That was kind of the big brag, if you will. But what was crazy is somewhere that you may understand where it is. Have you ever heard of the Toy Hall of Fame somewhere in Iowa, close to the Field of Dreams, within maybe about an hour drive?
That sounds familiar.
But to make a long story
I'm from
short,
about 4 hours from the field, but
yeah, but to make a long story short, we're just kind of out in the middle. And Iowa's similar to Indiana. I'm not going to make one out to be any better.
Yes.
But let's be real. You can drive 40 or 50 miles and you're going to run out of gas because there's no gas stations. Certain parts of Indiana. But anyway, we just go to the Toy Hall of Fame, and I'm sitting here looking at like Pez dispensers from whatever the hell year they came out in. And it was just it was a great experience, man, because I'm like sitting there thinking, wow, Kevin Costner was here, Shoeless Joe Jackson with his blades of grass going through the toes right there in Dyersville, Iowa. And it was bizarre to me, that it was the setting that it was, so.
It's an interesting state for sure, and it's amazing how many people are actually from there. But I mean, I think it took me moving away from there to realize how special of a place it is and how much I actually am proud to be from there. Because,
that's always the case, though,
Yeah.
It's always the case. You don't really appreciate it. Like, as a kid, I couldn't wait to get out of Indianapolis. And here I sit. And I love it now, but it is also is a lot different than it was when I was a kid.
Non-political, but let's be real, man. People treat you like you should be treated. If you run out of gas or you have a flat tire, I'm not judging your state, but I'm judging your state. Man, if I run out and got a flat tire, somebody's probably going to stop and help me. And I'm the dumbass country kid that can't change his own tire. Sorry to say that out loud. But,
Me too.
we'll edit that out because we're not live. But point I'm making is you have people that care, and it's a sense of community. It's a sense of accomplishment. Yeah. In my hometown, just to explain to you, it's kind of a cool story, but the little towns were 200 to 400 people towns, and they would shut down work. Everybody would get behind the bus. They would drive 4 to 6 miles. So everybody in the town on one side of the little basketball gym of 200 people, everybody on the other side. Mixing crowds on each end. Fire marshal would sit down the gym at, 400 people and not allow anybody else in. And that's just, basketball's been entrenched in my life and sports and stuff. And you're kind of, I'll tell you for the second time, man, you're kind of muddling or doing different directions, because I think it's cool. not only the sports merge with the wrestling, but then the music thrown in there, man. That's got to be exciting because it's like you almost, I know you know what's going on, but it's like, man, if I looked at your calendar outside looking in, I'm like, damn, you get to go to a concert, you get to go to a ball game, you get to do et cetera. That's some pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, I have a very understanding wife. We'll just say that.
Does she travel with you much?
Not as much now that we have 3 kids. When we had our daughter, before we had our twins, when it was just our daughter, because our daughter was 9 when my wife got pregnant with our twins. And so when it was just her, she was a little bit older, so, she would go to Iowa, see my mom and my family in July for a couple weeks, and that stretch of time there in 2019, for sure, I was like, you're going to be on my schedule for a week. And she lasted about 3 days.
Yeah.
And she's like, I don't know how you do this. I'm like, I don't know either. If we can get a babysitter and it's something she really, 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 really wants to do, she'll go. She doesn't like people or crowds. So it's got to be a concert she loves. Like, she wanted to go to the Rob Zombie and Alice Cooper show.
I thought that was good. I thought that'd be an awesome show. That was at Clips, right? Or whatever it's called now. Ruoff. What is it called now? I can't even keep track.
The Verizon Clips Ruoff Music Amphitheater.
I still call it Deer Creek, right?
The Creek of Deer.
I'm dating myself a little bit, but I went to the Great Southern Trendkill with Pantera and White Zombie, and it was good, man. The thing that stuck with me is that I can put it into your perspective because you get it. Nick gets it. But it was the weirdest thing that all those people had hearses with the painted and scripted, like, weird ass, like, I can't even the murals is the word I'm looking for, but
yes,
a hand painted mural that doesn't look professional on the side of a hearse. I'm just trying to be like, that's freaking cool, but I don't know about you, but I don't want to drive around in a hearse. I'm not judging anybody, but that just
they were probably like,
with
doctors or like teachers or something. It's like teacher by day, Satan worshiper by night. You know what I mean? Like that
metal crowd, man. Metal crowds are crazy. I'm pretty sure my wife's mom is still mad at us for this, but when our daughter was 5, we took her. We couldn't get a babysitter, so she went with us to Marilyn Manson and Rob Zombie when she was 5. And I'm pretty sure her mom still hasn't forgiven me for that one when it was not my idea. But we weren't the only parents there with their kids, though.
I bet, yeah.
She wasn't even the youngest kid there. It was crazy. Like, metal crowds are
that crowd, weird, you're right. I went to, Ozfest 98.
Ooh.
So that was the first year. I think it stopped after a couple years, but it ended up making it in Rolling Stone. But it was the first year that people started, I don't know why, they started ripping up the sod and filling it.
About that one.
Yes, dude. Like a friend of mine got chucked in the back of the head with a big piece of sod. Like it was insane. But they did that for a couple years, and so they had to start. Like, who would think you would have to have someone guard the grass, right? But they started having to have people like
a yard warbler.
Is he picking grass?
He's got his new wrestling. He's already thinking that's my new wrestlers. Then the yard warbler.
Growing up in Iowa,
good stuff,
we didn't have Ozfest. I grew up 4 hours from Chicago, so you always heard about that stuff, but you never got to see it. So those are the concert tales I always grew up hearing about. And then in 2017 or 18, maybe 19, Slipknot was on tour. They were coming through Noblesville. And I kept hearing stories about early on in the tour. This is just 5 years ago. People were lighting fires in the lawn and throwing fireballs.
My God, dude.
And I'm like, yes!
Exactly. That would be part of it.
And people are
finally see it.
People are so like, monkey see, monkey do. It's like, oh, we got fire. Okay, let's go. You know what I mean? Like,
it's insane.
My unheralded is relative, but my second zombie concert, I was down in Evansville, 4.5 hours from my house. I had basketball practice next morning. I'm gonna name drop, but a buddy named Travis Haynes. We went to watch Toadies open up for Zombie, and Toadies actually threw a hell of a show. Yeah, the Toadies opened up for Zombie, and when I say that, they were more like a metal, like getting the crowd like amped, which was so weird because I thought that they were kind of more on the rock side. And then the other band that really surprised me live was the Smashing Pumpkins. They they jammed harder than I thought they would, because they were to me, it's like a mellow music, but they got little jams, and they kind of changed tunes a little bit. And then Green Day, I got to tell my Green Day story. So I threw my socks on the drummer, like on the drum of Green Day, and the guy literally took my sweaty sock and flipped it off like mid kind of song, and he pointed his drumstick at me like, "Hey, badass, that was pretty cool." Actually, he didn't say anything, but to me, he was like, "Hey, this dumbass actually did this," and it was kind of funny.
It was a mutual acknowledgement there.
Exactly,
it happened.
Exactly, like, hey, this guy's at least creative. So
I covered a concert. I don't know if you've ever been to. I don't know if you guys have ever gotten up to Fort Wayne or not. But there's a venue up there called Pierre's.
Yeah, I've been there. Absolutely.
Yes, it is a party, especially, and it's mainly 21 and up. You've been there, and when it's a 21 and up show, so they do some all ages now, but man, when it's 21 and up and it's the right band, it's the closest thing you're going to get to the Sunset Strip in 1985 or 6. The first show I ever saw there, it was Hinder and Nonpoint, and it was crazy. Waitresses were bringing Jello shots in the crowd and dancing with people, and I covered Stone.
Crowd surf me over there.
I think they were just $1 too, so everyone got hammered. But I did. I covered a show. It was Stone Sour, which I don't know if you know who Stone Sour is.
Yeah,
but yeah. I was the only photographer approved for the show, and I'm shooting. And when I shoot as a photographer, you're up against the stage, so you can just reach forward and just touch the guys. And I'm shooting the show, and security grabs me and pulls me off to the side. I'm like, what was that about? He's like, look behind you. The crowd is crowd surfing the trash cans to the stage. And I was this close to being just
smacked,
pelted in the back of the head with the trash can. There's the giant gray hard trash cans, not the aluminum ones we used in wrestling that don't really hurt. These are the heavy duty ones, and it was insane. I love that place.
So Reggie, what's next for you? Do you have are you pretty happy where you're at? Are you looking to start anything new? You got any projects in the works or anything like that?
I mean, dude, I have so much going on as it is. I've got my next concert is next Wednesday. It'll be Set It Off and From Ashes to New. So that's coming up on Wednesday. October is a slow month for me. I have mainly just football games this month. So Friday night, I'll be doing the Purdue-Oregon game. I'll be shooting that.
Nice.
And then,
very nice.
Yeah, very excited about that. All my Oregon fans can suck it, because I'll be there and they won't. So, yes.
Fly duck.
Yes.
Quack, quack.
I'm an Iowa fan, so I'm really hoping Oregon starts losing so we can win the Big Ten.
There you go.
But no, I've got that Friday. I've got a show next week, and then I think for the rest of October it's pretty slow. But November is going to be insane though, because November is when college basketball season kicks off, or tips off, and between Purdue men, IU women, then the Mad Ants, I'll cover them starting in December. The rest of my year is pretty full with concerts and games, and then wrestling every single Friday night, and then just somehow trying to balance the family life on top of that, and then interviews obviously coming up as well. My next interview, I believe, is Monday, and it's with a guy who was a writer for The Tonight Show for 20 years.
Wow.
That would be cool, yeah.
Yeah.
He'll be fun to talk to about the wrestling writing, the story writing. That would be cool.
Yes, and he would have been there in the 90s when Hulk Hogan and the WCWO guys were there. That's a good point. I'm going to plug you guys when I bring that up.
Hey, there you go. Let's go.
Yes.
Let's go.
So I've got that, and then I was going heavy with interviews for a while, with 2 to 3 interviews a week. It's kind of slowed down, but I've got Michael Sweet from the band Stryper coming up as well, so I'm excited about that one again.
Nice.
And then lots of album reviews. That's the cool thing about the front row, is I'll get the music about a month or two before it comes out, so I can do a review of it and stuff. So
that's awesome.
Lots of that coming up as well. So
I mean, you got plenty of free time. Plenty of free time.
Man, yeah.
Freeze relative, right?
It's crazy. My wife and kids are loving October because I'm always here.
That's cool.
So
yeah. Hey, big Christmas, big Christmas.
Yeah. With 3 kids, we start buying Christmas in September.
Yeah.
So.
What's crazy is back in the 90s and 2000s, so the whole arena would chant your name. So they were chanting for you, right? Like when they were saying Reggie. I mean,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you're talking about in the I guess it was the Hoosier Dome then, right?
Yeah, well, Market Square, Market Square, yeah.
Yeah.
So there's the number 31 that wears it, but I think I'm convinced that it might have been him.
Yeah,
I
I mean, Indy's always been kind of what's the word, premonitious? Is that a word?
So a funny
They summoned
story.
me. They smoked me into existence here. Is what
Exactly.
they did.
Yeah.
Well, funny story that you probably well know, Reggie, but I'm gonna provide it for our group. Just a real quick one here. So Reggie Wayne, right, is in the Pacers game for the first time, and I don't know what the time frame was, so I'm not going to try to tell the story. But anyway, they started chanting Reggie, and Reggie Wayne's he said he's throwing his shoulders back and he's bragging to his audience like, "Man, this is a football town. I thought this was a baseball town or a basketball town." And he's sitting there laughing, and then he admits that, hey, dude, Reggie Miller, But anyway, it was just kind of funny because he was a legend of Indianapolis in a different arena, obviously, and then Reggie, but it was just funny. So I thought I'd throw you a little props and let you think that they're chanting your name.
Hey,
man.
you never know, man. His picture could be on the side of the building downtown, one day,
there you go.
Miller's.
There
Never
you go.
know, right?
Yeah, it will be.
Okay,
will
see,
be.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love that.
I got an event that I'm going to, I don't want to talk a lot on a podcast, but I got an event I'm going to invite you to, man. It's an invitation only. Bob Costas is a keynote speaker here in about 3 months. I want you to go to that event with me.
Really?
You're going to be my personal guest. I'm not asking you to, but you can sit at my table if you want to. Man, you're going to interact with some Hall of Fame basketball players, Bob Costas, some people that you want to know if you don't already know, or reinforce some friendships that you already know probably, but it'll definitely want to give you an open invitation here on the podcast. Dropping Dimes is a foundation that's we're going to have a conversation with. So that's the ABA guys, getting them some of the benefits that they deserve as, as pioneers of the game, because I know you're into the old school wrestling, you're into concerts. And just helping people. I could tell you got a philanthropic heart. If you could do something nice, let's team up and maybe do a community event around in Indy. And I'll say this out loud to you: you're around Indy. A lot of guys, we want to travel the country and do stuff, but we've all got families. We don't have an excuse not to be part of something you're doing here in the local Indianapolis. We say 317, obviously, but it's you're a home away from home. You know what I mean? Like Anderson's 45 minutes away. I travel to Muncie a lot, but some good stuff, man.
Yeah. They ran out of that zip code now, though. It's like 476.
Yeah, 463. There you go.
Or 463. That's what it is. Yeah.
Hey, so
as an apartment manager, man, that area code drives me insane.
if I watch this and I'm trying to track you down or maybe show up at a local event, how am I finding you from a social media perspective online?
Yeah, so Facebook is going to be WCWO Wrestling, Front Row Report, Indie Sports Daily. It's the 3 best ways to find what I do. I'm not really on Twitter. I've never figured Twitter out.
I
so
haven't either. If you do, let me know, because I haven't. I mean, we have a page, and I put stuff on there just because we use something to just post to all the things. But yeah, I've never understood Twitter.
Hey, bro, don't limit my characters.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
I'm sorry, but I'm not that creative. If I want to say something, you're going to think I'm a jackass because I wrote too much, or you're going to think I'm not interesting. But don't limit to 164.25 characters. But anyway,
on YouTube would be YouTube Front Row Report.
Okay.
And Indie Sports Daily.
Okay.
Then I just joined TikTok, and I'm not happy about it, but I'm on there. It's just Edwards Reggie 1. Still not thrilled that I'm on TikTok, but I'm on there.
It's the future, man. Got to embrace it.
Then I'm on Truth Social just to terrorize people. That's all that is. Just absolutely, yes. I have fun on there. It's been a while, but it's about time to amp that about. But no, those are the main places to find me. Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube are the main places to find what I do. If you want to check out the interviews, I'm posting a lot of YouTube shorts with the interviews I do on Indie Sports Daily and Front Row Report. So if you like wrestling, check out Indie Sports Daily. Lots of wrestling interviews on there. Front Row Report for music. I branched out to some other stuff, kind of like what you guys are doing as well. Yeah, that's where people can find me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, hey man, we'll talk a little bit more once we stop this here. But
yeah, for sure.
But yeah, thanks. We really appreciate you coming on. It's been an interesting conversation. Yeah. That's one thing that I love about doing this is I learn about the things that I don't already know about. I learn so much, so I'm like, yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've
experienced. I branched out to other stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Right
Thanks for having me on, guys. I had a blast. It was a lot of fun.
Yep,
Appreciate it.
absolutely.